Welcome to Law and Society. We're going to talk about a bunch of things today, ranging from political prosecutions by weaponizing of the DOJ. We're going to talk briefly about all of these topics. Donald's corruption, the baby bigots of the Republican Party, bombing boats in international waters, and the Pentagon's press exodus. There's a lot happening, and I have laid out essentially the news stories in the references section of this video. So if you don't want to hear me talk, just go to the references section and you can see each of the sources that I have provided. And one of the big reasons why I haven't spoken about Donald Trump's corruption and his family's corruption is because it's just too much information. You know, I'm focused on his attack on the Constitution and on our constitutional rights and his turning of the American government into a fascist regime. But there's still so much else happening that it's difficult to keep track. Like I'm still holding on to regain some brain capacity so I can go back and read Judge Perry and then the Seventh Circuit's reasoning in continuing to hold the National Guard from deploying in the Chicago area. But that doesn't mean that the federal government is not going out and doing the very things that Judge Mills had prohibited the federal government from doing by way of the federal agents. And so, you know, the court set new restrictions saying that all DHS personnel must wear must wear body cams that are on duty. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they all put on body cams, but they were all instructed to have their body cams turned off because that's not part of the judge's order specifically as to whether to have the body cams on or not. I don't know if the judge will be that specific, and we'll just have to see where that goes. But I digress because, again, see, there's just so much information. Donald Trump's family has corruptly used the weight of the office of the President of the United States in such a way as to gain a wealth of close to $3 to $5 billion. That's with a B. That's $3,000 to $5,000 million in the last year since he took office. And they're doing it out in the open. It's not that they're hiding any of it. Everything from the Qatari jet to Jared Kushner going to the Middle East to Barron Trump working in some capacity for TikTok, all of these things and the sort of use of the office of the President of the United States to sell merchandise like Trump watches and Melania ornaments. It is just obscene, and I don't know how else to really discuss that other than to tell you, go read the Forbes article that I've referenced to get a sort of, you know, like I have a survey idea of the corruption. And it's just way too much to go into each one of those stories. And so I don't, because my focus again is on the constitutional issues. Then there comes the attack on the press, and that is something that we need to really talk about. And, you know, when the Pentagon, the Defense Department, or as Donald Trump's regime likes to call it now, the Department of War, sent out guidelines for their news reporters saying that they could not report on anything that wasn't already approved by the Pentagon or the Defense Department, even if that information is unclassified information about our military. No one except for, I think, the Federalist and ONN network have essentially, they've turned in their passes and the press walked out. In one or two of my videos, at some point, I talked about how they're going to shut out the press, and Pete Hegseth did it by offering them a sort of a social contract that really would render the function of the press obsolete, because the press would become state media. And the fact that over 95% of the press said no thank you and walked out of there was a statement that the press still stands, and that the press is going to keep reporting as it's reporting, as the sources give them the information, as the leaks come out. They're not going to need the Pentagon's approval. They're not going, even if, what essentially this does for the Defense Department and for the government side is, as I said before, it makes it more opaque. Their scam of being transparent is that they're going to conduct their corruption in broad daylight. But on the other hand, when it comes to transparency of governance, they're going to be as opaque as you can be, to the point of Pam Bondi telling the Senate that she is not going to answer their questions when she has been brought to the Senate committee to answer questions about what has happened with the DOJ and the FBI's weaponization of our federal law enforcement effectively. And that brings me to the topic of the political persecutions and prosecutions. There's the prosecution of James Comey, of John Bolton, of New York AG Letitia James. There's talks of Jack Smith being there somewhere. And the fact that, and in each of those cases is something to report on. And I've provided the news in the references section, and it's just one news. All you have to go Google is political prosecutions or prosecution of James Comey, John Bolton, Letitia James. Then you have going after one of the Fed governors, Lisa Cook, to try to fire her, and the cause being a bogus cause of mortgage fraud or something of the sort. Each of these stories are, in and of themselves, report worthy, and I know I'm not doing them justice, but I just want to pick each one of them and give you a heads up that this is all happening as we go into the No Kings protest on Saturday. And I'm sure there's going to be continuing protests about what is happening in Chicago, in Portland, and they're thinking about going to San Francisco next. I only warn you that San Francisco nudity is allowed by the city of San Francisco as well. So do expect to see naked protests like you did in Portland. But the fact that there's this political persecution happening is a huge red flag and a hallmark of a fascist regime. And we need to be aware of it. Another authoritarian move is bombing without giving due process of law, without any investigation, bombing. This has now happened 5 times of boats alleged to be carrying drugs from Central and South America and not having any accountability for it. Experts have come out and said that this is a crime, this is murder, this is violation of national and international law. And the military commander who is in charge of the regiment that is shooting these things down, these boats off the water, his name is Halsey, has declared, Commander Halsey has declared that he is going to retire, which is, I guess it is just really coincidental, but in these situations, I don't think it's a coincidence that a career military man would not want to take part in these murders in international waters. And that in and of itself, all of that, another huge story and scandal. Then you have the political article that came out about the Republican Chad group. They're talking about kids. No, sir. These people were all over the age of 21. Some close to 30, over 40. And they were talking about loving Hitler, about comparing making racial jokes about animals and monkeys. It's just one of those really jarring things that nobody in America should be shocked about. Why are we shocked that the young Republican legacy is now going to be the MAGA legacy, which is an open acceptance of the darkest demons in American history, which is bigotry, racism, xenophobia, misogyny, sexism, hatred. And those are displayed in this chat. You don't see leftist, anti-fascist chat groups coming out and being leaked of them talking about the far right like that. Even to this day, Democrats say that no matter who voted for us, we want Medicaid for all. We want to make sure that everybody who needs SNAP benefits has that benefit. But now the MAGA talking point has become that Democrats are terrorists, evil, Hamas, Antifa is a terrorist organization, and if you identify as anti-fascist, you may be designated as a domestic terrorist, and then federal action will be taken. On the grounds of what crime? Nobody knows, because while you can designate somebody a domestic terrorist, there is no law that gives you the power to arrest that person under U.S. law without violating their First Amendment, especially if what they are doing, if there's no evidence whatsoever of terrorism or the arbitrary definition of anti-fascist being terror. If you are a regime that says anti-fascism is a threat to this regime, that makes the regime fascist. That makes it authoritarian, that blows up boats in international waters, killing people from Trinidad and Tobago, from Colombia, from Venezuela. And they're asking for answers now. Why were our people killed? You have a domestic state going after career public servants. You have that same government pushing the press out, creating this wall and stonewalling the free press from our Defense Department. It's just the first one. Don't be surprised if one day Caroline Levitt says, hey, I don't feel like having y'all here. You have to sign something along the lines of what Hegseth said. And the White House press corps walks out the door with the exception of Federalist and ONN. The pathway is cleared now. We are down that slippery slope. And then there's the Trump corruption happening, the violations of law that is happening in constitutional violations of due process rights of individuals, from infringing on their First Amendment rights, their Fourth Amendment rights, by unusual and cruel punishment, violation of the Eighth Amendment, using state resources in states like Tennessee and Florida brings in the violation of the 14th Amendment, due process of law. And then there is the violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, violations of the 10th Amendment, state sovereignty, and just inapplicability of the laws that have been invoked, like 10 USC 12406. There is no insurrection or rebellion, and the evidence in front of the court doesn't show that. That's essentially what the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals is saying, and that's what Judge Perry said. That's what the judge who ruled in the Posse Comitatus Act in California said. So this ever-encroaching fascist regime is all well and good, and we're now also learning that the coming generation of people who will be Republican leaders have already been groomed and are probably now grooming their children to have in their hearts this disparity where Democrats are evil, Democrats are terrorists, Democrats are anti-fascists, and anything that they say is anti-American. No. If you are anti-fascist, you are pro-American. And if you are pro-MAGA and pro-Donald's regime, then you are part of a fascist regime, and history will not look at you kindly. You may not appreciate the weight of the moment now, but when your grandchildren come back to you and ask you how you could stand up and defend MAGA and Donald Trump, it will be a difficult question to answer. With that said, thank you for listening. Stay up to date. Stay safe. Remember, when you go out to the No Kings protest, wear frog costumes. All hail the frog. All hail anti-fascism. All hail the United States of America and our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and the rule of law. And peaceful protest. That is what our objective is for Saturday. And that is how we strive for a more perfect union every day, by exercising our constitutional right to peaceably protest and express ourselves peaceably and peacefully. Thank you so much for listening.